Hurricane by David Wiesner. Hurricane. I can't find Hannibal anywhere, Mom, David said. I thought he'd be home when we got back from the store. I'm sure Hannibal is all right, Mom answered. Cats know more about storms than people do. But if it will make you feel better, why don't you and George go look for him while I put the groceries away? Don't go too far from the house, though. Your father will help you look for him as soon as he's finished securing everything in the yard. There he is, David exclaimed. He and George peered through the gaps between the strips of tape they had put on the storm door. A thoroughly wet Hannibal peered indignantly back at them. Let's get him inside before the wind blows him away, George said. Could the wind really be strong enough to blow Hannibal away? David asked. Well, the radio said we could expect sustained winds of 50 miles per hour, gusting to 90 any time now, and the hurricane is still 50 miles off the coast. Look at the leaves out there. It looks like a green blizzard, George answered. David listened to the walls of the house creaking against the wind. If it's like that now, what's it going to be like when the hurricane hits? Suddenly, the lights went out. Nobody panic, their dad called from the kitchen. The electric lines must be down. Hang in there, boys. We're on the way with flashlights and candles. They had supper by the fireplace that evening. It felt safe with everybody together, even though there were creaks and groans and sometimes great roaring sounds coming from outside. The hurricane was in full force. David and George took a hurricane lamp to bed with them. The storm had begun to ease. Maybe the eye is passing over us, George said. I'd like to be one of those weather planes, the ones that fly into the eye of the hurricane where it's all calm and peaceful. Yeah, David said, though he wasn't so certain he'd like flying into a hurricane. I wonder where the birds are now, and the squirrels. I bet the squirrels are holed up in their tree. But I've read about birds being blown thousands and thousands of miles, maybe even clear across the Atlantic, George said. Do you think anything awful has happened outside? David asked. Who knows? We'll see tomorrow, George replied. The next morning, only one elm tree was standing near the corner of the yard. The day before, there had been two. The downed tree was lying across the neighbor's lawn. Look at that, David said. It could have hit Mr. Wilbur's house, and we didn't even hear it fall. Wow, this is great, George said. They circled the tree. It looks like a sleeping giant. Look at those big limbs and branches. It's like a jungle. Let's play safari. We've never had a jungle to play safari in before. David didn't wait for an answer. He was already climbing the fallen tree. David fearlessly led the expedition into the very heart of the jungle, stalking the mighty leopard. That afternoon, they rode the 7 seas with George at the helm, while David searched the horizon for pirate ships. All the next day and the day after that, they journeyed to the stars and beyond. Sometimes they just sat and enjoyed the view. The tree was a private place, big enough for secret dreams, small enough for shared adventure. "What do we do this afternoon?" George asked. "I don't care," David answers. "It just feels good being here." Then it happened. They woke one morning to an ear-splitting roar and the sight of men advancing on the tree with chainsaws. "How could they do this?" David asked. "It's our tree." "It's our tree, but it's in Mr. Wilbur's yard. I guess that's how they could do it." "But they didn't even tell us," David said, feeling as miserable as he'd ever felt in his life. "It was a great tree," said George. "Yeah," David agreed, "a great tree." David and George spent the rest of the day sitting under the surviving elm, watching the men haul away their tree. In the late afternoon, the sky grew dark and thunder rumbled in the distance. "Hey guys," Dad called. "There's going to be a storm. The wind's kicking up. Come on inside before it starts to rain." David and George looked up at the old elm. "This is a great tree too," David said. "Yeah," George agreed. "And if it fell, it would be in our yard." The end.